The Terrible Warriors are made possible by listeners just like you who've decided to support us through Patreon at patreon.com/terriblewarriors. Listeners like Jennifer McMyler, Natalie Axelson, and Benjamin Axelson. Find out how you can become a supporter at patreon.com/terriblewarriors. And listen to the very end of this episode, or just read the show notes, to learn how you can enter in to win a free physical copy of the Symbaroum Starter Set from Free League Games. And today, on the Terrible Warriors, we wrap up our incredible gaming session of Symbaroum by inviting back to the table Symbaroum's co-creator, Mattias Johnsson Haake. This conversation was recorded fresh off the heels of our August recording session, so while the players and myself knew how things went later in the campaign, Mattias himself had only listened to the first 2 episodes. But after all the fun we had playing his game, we absolutely had to invite him to join us for our post-game debrief. This next hour will not be your typical interview with the game creator. We heap love on him, and we gush about the game, and we share our favorite story points, and Mattias opens up about the design choices and some of his favorite themes in the game and how Symbaroum formed into what it has become. This is the final episode for now in our 12-part campaign of Symbaroum. If you haven't listened to the complete playlist, I highly suggest you go back into our feed, listen to all of those story episodes before this interview, because we are going to spill the beans all over your spoiler alert. This is the post-game debrief with Symbaroum co-creator Mattias Johnsson Haake and our players Sean Horbachuk, Ainsley Moores, and Mitch Wallace. Enjoy. Mattias, for this conversation, I was like, you and I don't need to talk again on the podcast. We've done that. We've been through, we can send people the link. We have a good time. We've got a good rapport. What I really wanted to do is, now that we've finished playing the game, I know you've only heard the first story episode, and the second one is out. Technically 3 if we count the prelude, the episode 0. Yeah. But of the actual story, there's 2 that are out. Sean, Ainsley, and I, we've recorded everything. We finished in August. And by finished, we got as much done as we possibly could before we went. And I remember looking at the Wrath of running through and kind of counting in my head, like how long we do things and how long these read out. I'm going like, it is going to take at least 7 more 4-hour sessions at the pace we move at if no one detours to go to the end. So maybe we'll return when we do another block of recordings. But for now, what happened in our story is we got as far as descending into the sinkhole. And which isn't very far in terms of answering anything, which is kind of fun.
But you got to meet Gadramon and Ephrenea.
They heard her singing, and then we went to credits. And so we didn't even meet her. We just heard her voice going through the stone. We ran out.
Okay.
That was the end.
But that's down
we did
below.
meet the witches outside, though.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The witches that came on the aliens, on the Colossi.
They went out and had morning tea with them at the edge of the forest and asked them questions and had a nice conversation, which was really fun. And they also went knocking on the doors of the paladins or the Templars to say hi to them, because they all fought together. And of course, Yandrame being a devout member of the church, like that's an in for them. Of course, they don't know why the brothers are being like, oh, well, I mean, their brother is injured on the bed, but also you can't come in, you can't go, you got to leave. And they think they're being followed, and they're acting kind of paranoid, and they just shuffle them out of the hotel and send them back out into the street. And
but this will be a perfect cliffhanger for the listeners as well, because you don't want to spoil the first part of
and
the
so
campaign.
What I get to do now is when we go in, we'll end. The last lines will be those lyrics of the witch singing through the cave. Then it's just going to end, and then I'll have an extra going. If you want to know what's going on here, if you want to know the secrets, you want to know the answers, if you want to play this yourself, Wrath of the Warden is available here. And and that'll be the end of our campaign to a bit. I mean, certainly I want to go back just because what we have is and I'll let the other two take over because I want them to have this conversation. But I want to fill you in so that you've got a bit of context for where they're coming from. Of course, the woman that they meet, who's going to offer them all their riches and any promises they want, in this case, is, yeah, I can connect you with people who know where your mother is. Sure, they're well connected and all that. And I've been noodling in my head that there is a strong possibility that if Elindra's mother is still alive, she's probably off with the Iron Pact herself, somewhere out there doing things. What's happened to the father, I do not know. Elindra has gone from being an innocent, scared librarian bookworm to badass monster hunter.
I had some really lucky rolls.
and it's just decimating those clan beasts, and the others like Sean and Mitch are standing beside going like, what has happened to sweet innocent Elindra? And Elindra is willing to like go almost to any length if it means that there is a breadcrumb of information of what's happened to where her mother went. Because
but I just listened to episode 2, and what Yandrome did to my beloved Mal Rogan actually made me feel a little bit sorry for him.
Being blasted by the holy light of Prios, the poor guy.
Yeah.
That was quite a hit.
Yeah, Mal's still out there, so he could. He's obviously not going to make an appearance when we're off in Thistlehold. But if we ever did return again,
many chances.
He's definitely
Not
out
dead.
there with the burn marks to prove it, waiting to find a way to find that Thurge that showed him what for. For a group of people that were completely ill-equipped for combat. Which we spent because then they got all the experience points before we start Wrath of the Warden.
Yeah.
And they're like, buff up our characters. We need to survive.
Yeah, you didn't build the most, I don't know, combat-oriented group, but
Not at all.
in Symbaroum, you don't start as you would a level 1 player in 5e. You actually start at what we call the normal challenge rate level, and then there are the weak ones. I'm not saying that Rogan is one of those, because he isn't, but even a crappily or not very skillfully built character is not helpless in Symbaroum.
No, and this is what they found. Their weaknesses. All right, well, we're not going to defeat them in arm to arm combat, but we can terrify them, and we can rout them by throwing yes, that Prios's burning light is really good, but it's got like maybe 2 shots before you start taking corruption
threshold.
But they don't know that. They don't know how many shots you've got. They just see this burning supernova of terror coming out of the mill. Yeah. And they don't know how many people are in there. They don't know how many people Keller's encountered. And so it was just chaos and fear and breaking the will of the bandits. And then Mal Rogan's by himself going like, well, I'm not going to take them all on my own. and takes his hand and goes home. And so it was really fun for me to see them like, I was like, maybe everyone's gonna die in the second episode. I don't know, because I caught that like they're not like level 1 like D&D. They're neutral. They're normal. And so even in the first episode, when we zoom in on the campfire, I'm describing everyone, including the player characters, like as if they were NPCs. And if you're listening for the first few minutes, you're not gonna know unless you listen to episode 0. Which ones are the main characters yet? Is it the old man running the caravan? Is it the woman in black? Is it the siblings? Is it the 2 pathfinders? They're all being presented equally. And it's not until the actual story begins to roll do we then see the player characters start to step up where the other NPCs don't. And that's what starts advancing them into the main character status. Which was really, I haven't played a game like that where everyone kind of started anonymous in that way. Like you're just part of the crowd, but now, through desperation or through faith or through whatever reasons, they're rising through. So I wanted to have a chance to let our players talk to you about this game and have that as like our post-game conversation. So this will follow I know you haven't heard them yet, but this will follow the episode that'll come out after they've descended into the sinkhole. I know what happens because I've read everything. You know what happens because you've written everything. Sean and Ainsley don't actually know anything beyond that point. They haven't
actually
looked
gonna
yet.
die. I need to know so bad.
They got like those terrible lizards underneath the ground with no eyes have leaped at them, and that's the end. That's where it stops, and they're all losing their minds. So I'll let them take it from here. Sean and Ainsley, welcome. Mattias is here with us. We are all together after this experience, and I know you're Ainsley is like you're scratching at the walls. You need to know what happens next. I can't tell you what happens next, but I can do one better. I can bring to you the guy who wrote everything that's driving you.
Mattias, tell me everything. No, nice to meet you.
Yeah, super nice to be here. As I have only heard a couple of episodes so far because that's all you have revealed on your cast. So I'm quite anxious to know actually what happens to you guys during what remains. I mean, by the time people listen to this, they will already have heard it all, but I'm a little bit in the dark. Maybe I will ask some questions on my own during this.
I saw one comment come up about like, oh, is this gonna be another slapstick comedy take on a game? And maybe it was a little lighthearted in the first episode, but Sean and Ainsley, Mattias hasn't heard what happened in the rest of just the Promised Land, those first 4 episodes. The next episode that comes out at the time that we're recording is the episode when the elves arrive at the caravan and reveal that someone is corrupted, and these happy-go-lucky, I've been playing them like Merry and Pippin from Lord of the Rings this whole time, and they're terminally ill with evil, and there's nothing that can save them, and what do you do? And there's no more jokes for those next 2 episodes. It's just horror. And the moment when Bellin rips out as this abomination.
That was awful.
Yeah.
Oh, that was awful.
I could hear
Emotionally devastating.
You all wanted to just throw up, and it was just this silence of like, Mattias, what I had with them is they decided to defend them. The elves went to attack the caravan, but during the fight, Bellin and Ludo are being protected by Lestra, and they're in like a tent. And Ludo is being, we got this, being optimistic. We're going to get out of this. They're going to take care of us. We're going to go with the Twilight Fires. We're going to be fine, Bellin. And Bellin is suffering from migraines all day now. And it's getting worse. And the headaches are getting worse.
Migraines.
And it's right.
Big quotation marks.
And he's starting to like, he can't, to the point where his speech is starting to slur now. And it's like, it's not migraines. It's like a stroke. Like what's happening? He's like, Bellin is gone before the transformation really starts. He's just in this pain. And so while the fight is going on, when Bellin transforms now, they're not fighting the elves. The elves aren't fighting the caravan anymore. Everyone's just like, oh no.
Well, it was really hard playing the scene leading up to that where we had to choose, because as a player, I knew I was making the wrong choice. But it was the choice my character would make 100%. But there was a lot of tension there. It was like, no, this is, I know this is wrong, but Yandrome doesn't know that.
Yeah. And like trying to play a sister who has to technically agree, or who wants to agree with her brother, who she's finally reunited with. That episode is a critical turning point for, I think, all of our characters. It's because we come back in Thistlehold and we're all a lot. Actually, hilariously, Verd is the one who seems the most even keel and like not affected.
Oh, Verd is like, well, put a bolt in their heads right now. We don't have to give them to the elves to be killed. I'll kill them, right? Like he's just like, if they're corrupted from the darkness of Davokor, like this is not a competition here. They're already dead, and he was gonna do it. Because that's just
I was actually going to ask you about sort of rewind a little bit exactly to that decision, because I think, to me, those kinds of decisions are what Symbaroum is all about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, after making that decision, okay, you as a player felt maybe that I'm making the wrong decision. But the thing is, in the end, in a game like, or in a setting like Symbaroum, what we would prefer as designers of these scenes is, of course, that even if you make what you feel is the right decision, you will probably have a little bit of afterthought.
Yes.
You're not super sure that this was the correct call.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very excited to hear that you, Sean, brought it up without me asking. And I hope you had many more of those kinds of,
definitely
dilemmas.
Yeah. Those were my favorite parts, actually. The like those moral choices where you're forced to think, not just like you have to consider the morals of your character and what would they actually think is the right thing to do. And there is no obvious answer. I really like that about the setting and about this campaign in particular.
It has a scale where, like, you've got the factions, you've got the church, and you've got the clans, and you've got the witches, and you've got the monarchy, and they all have their own idea of what is going on, like what the concept of darkness is, what Davakara is, what Symbaroum represents, treasure, how Thistlehold should be, how the clan should be, and they're all wrong in their own little way, and they're all right in their own little way. And the church has hugely wrong ideas about how to deal with the darkness, but they do recognize it as a legitimate threat, just like the rest of them. And but the Iron Pact isn't, they're not blameless either. Their tactics, they're splintered in choices. They're not unified, which is like a whole other like critique on liberal activism and different factions within just that one group, and they're all trying to do what they can with the information that they have, and everyone is working with incomplete information, so nobody can make a completely informed decision because the answers aren't there. And Bellin and Ludo, like, that was it was so important that we did do that one before we went into Wrath of the Warden or any of the other stuff, because before you arrive in Symbaroum, to have this opportunity in the privacy of those mountains, in that caravan, away from the bigger picture, you just have these two guys that you've been kind of like dealing with for the last two episodes, and they're fun to have around, and you might not like them much, you might not think that they're competent, but you don't want any harm to come to them. And then
did you do the scene where you actually saved them from the wolves?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have actually already saved them.
We saved them all.
So the tomorrow's episode that's going to come out is they save them from the wolves, and they find out there's this moment when the wolf dies and turns back into an elf, and they're like, oh shit, what have we done? Oh shit, oh god. And Lestra is the one who helps explain them to everyone, because you need that character who knows what the bigger picture. And Mitch, being such a big fan of Symbaroum, he was able to then take it as a player and explain to Elindra and Yandrame what the Iron Pact is. Because Verd would know, but also Mitch knew because he's such a big fan of the games. So it was kind of fun as a GM to step back and just let them explain to each other what the Iron Pact meant. And I didn't correct them if they didn't get everything right. And then at the end of that episode, they don't meet the other two yet. But as Bellin and Ludo are walking away, alone, away from the rest of the group, Verd turns on his witch sight and just takes a look. And that's where the episode ends. The music goes dark, and there's this moment of like the black mold growing on green, and there's not much green left. And Mitch is like, okay, but what's the number? And I just let it pause. I just let it 9. And there's just this silence at the table, and they're like, oh no. Oh no.
Bellin and Ludo were the first conversation Elindra had, just by like happenstance of they talked about them being illiterate and cartography.
Sorry, the episode actually ends with the blizzard and hearing the conjured voice over the blizzard. So you also, there's this sense of like, who the hell are these? Like, you don't know that there's only 2 others. You just know that there's this presence, this scary, they can move blizzards on you. And there's this voice in there. There's just like, I love how invisible the elves operate. And they just, again, they're doing the same tactics that Yandrame and Ainsley, like what you guys were doing against Mal Rogan. They're just doing it on a bigger scale. Yes. They are small in number, but they will make 2 feel like 200 just in presence alone. And Verd confronts them in the camp and says, "You're corrupted. Tell us what you have done. You have done something that has brought the Iron Pact onto us, and we will not leave these mountains alive if you do not give us the information we need in order to make the right choices." And that's when Bellin is like, "Shut up, Ludo, shut up." And Bellin's like, "It's too late. It's too far. We got to come clean, Bellin." And he pulls back his sleeves and he shows them the stigmas.
They were so lovable.
And he breaks down into tears and he tells them the whole story. And so they know what's going on, but they also know that, like, you know, and Lestra's trying to advocate for them to let her take them to the monastery instead, because, like, as a reader, like, all Ludo is guilty of is taking a skull in a circle at a camp and then handing it to the person on his left. And that moment, a couple seconds where he touched it and he felt its warmth and he passed it on. That's it. His fate is sealed. And it's so unfair. It's so, like, he didn't deserve that. And it sucks. And that was beautiful. Like, in terms of just, like, this isn't about judging right and wrong. Are Bellin and Ludo guilty? It's irrelevant. They're sick. And they're a danger to everyone around them now. But Yandrome and Ainsley, or Yandrome and Alindra, they don't know as new players how dangerous they are yet. And that transformation and that monster fight that happened at the end, where they ended up having to break the Sunstone open, Mattias, and summon an elemental being just because they were all going to die. I think one of the elves does die, and then Ludo goes running off into the woods, and the other one chases, and we don't know what happened. There's a scuffle in blood, and it looks like they fell off a cliff, and they both died together. And the only way they stop that is Bartolom has to break open the Sunstone and summon that elemental being to come down through the storm and destroy it. And Sean, it was using the Prios, but going way past those temporary points of corruption. His arm, I know you've mentioned Princess Mononoke. It was very much like his arm was going black and bubbling as he's holding on to this thing, and his arm is like rotting as he's. And I'm going like, oh, this is it. We're not making it. We're gonna start new characters when we go to Wrath of the Warden.
Die.
We thought it was over.
And so going into Wrath of the Warden and arriving at Thistlehold, we jump a few months in that. We do a time jump. And it's clear now that, like, especially with Alindra and also with Yandrome, that what happened in that mountain with Bellin and Ludo, they were never going to let happen again. Like,
it was very defining.
It was so traumatizing, but so, like, there's a before and after of, like, welcome to Symbaroum. And the characters in our second half, when we're in Thistlehold, is they have been transformed in their own way from that experience in the mountains. It was really cool.
Yeah, the tutorial section was just, it was so fabulous because especially I came into it not having read much of the lore. I was like, I'm not going to read much, and I'm just going to let myself be the idiot character that people can, like, find the world from. And I tend towards happier characters, so we didn't have, and I mean, Yandrome is like falsely happy, and then we have Verd, our, like, doom and gloom barbarian we're trying to cheer up the whole time. And
always wrong. I mean,
and it was great though, because our characters wanted to be right, and we just had such a great time of keeping that up until that last episode of sort of the, like, tutorial area, where it was very in character traumatizing and gave us a lot to leap off from, and then, like, change to really be like, this is Symbaroum. Now you know what the world is like. There are hard choices, because it was a rough fight debate between Verd and Yandrome, and Yandrome was particularly unyielding because he won in the end, kind of. And then we all suffered for it. We all did. And I mean, it ended up being just crazy impactful and wonderful, because it led to us all changing as people by the time we got to Thistlehold, and we're like, my brother actually sucks. So does this church.
Oh, but you learned something. That's what experience is all about. Forget about those points. They are not very important in Symbaroum. It's about learning how that particular world functions. the social rules about living in a world like Symbaroum's.
Yeah.
So, but super interesting to hear. Actually, this first adventure that the tutorial adventure that you started off playing and will play for, is it 4 episodes?
I don't remember. We either have one
but something
left.
like that.
I think the next one just has the elves arrive, the debate is done about Bellin and Ludo, and then the 4th episode is basically a big fight. So I think there's 2 more left.
That was written mainly by my colleague Mattias Lilja, with the expressed intention to ease you into the combat rules of combat, but also into problem solving and into social dilemmas, and trying in this, when you meet the elves and the wolves and the shapeshifters and such, and Belun does what Belun does. That is sort of meant to teach you about the main conflict, about the setting.
And also this paranoia that you don't know, these lovable people that you are going to meet, you don't know, unless you've got Witch Sight like Verd, which one of them are ticking time bombs. Because 9 corruption, 9! And they were just acting around, going out to go chopping, we're going to have to do this, oh, don't worry about it. Like, they're fine. They think they're fine. They're keeping their clothes covered up because they're up in the mountains and it's all cold and everything. And they could maybe ward it off as frostbite or the elements and things like that. But you don't know how cancerous this thing is. And when you're in Thistlehold now, every single person you meet, you're not, you got to take a moment to but we've already met people we liked.
Yep.
Oh.
And the stakes are so high. Like if just one of those things almost wiped out our entire party, what happens if there's 3 or 4?
And it ratchets it. Like it does teach the initial test around the campfire before you even get into the caravan. Then the Sunstone is stolen, you got to track it down. And then dealing with Keller, who is a coward, and you think he's this big deal thief, and you get there and he just gives up. And then in our case, actually tried to join us for a while. And they're like, hey, look, he's got a bigger team. He's always trying to be on the winning side. And then at that point, you've earned the trust of the caravan, and they're starting to let them into bigger and bigger decision choices. So when the debate happens with Bellin and Ludo, their place when they're debating and when Argosto asks them for their opinion, it's an opinion that has now been earned over the last 2 hours. That isn't just because you're the protagonist, because they were nobodies when they were sitting around that campfire at the beginning. And one at a time, step at a time, they have earned their place at that table to be involved in deciding the tie-breaking vote on what happens with Bellin and Ludo, while simultaneously learning this political conflict going on between elves and humans, Iron Pact and Ambria, and also how that works with the clans, and realize this promised land that we are about to walk into, that we've got these that Queen Corinthia has set aside for her subjects, is messy. And it's going to only get messier. And it's really, I think for Alindra, it was heartbreaking for you to realize that this isn't the wasteland you're leaving behind. You're not necessarily going to a better place right now.
It was so rough, and I felt bad for her, and I was like, oh, this sucks. I didn't realize I wrote this to be so sad for her, because she just gets there and no parents, no nothing. They get to the city and they have nothing, and then her brother has just she's finally seeing the extreme faults he has, after hoping that being reunited with family would mean that things were easy and happy. And then Verd, the grumpy barbarian, is the guy who had it right. That's unfortunate.
Because I know you haven't heard it yet, Mattias, with Alindra and Yandrame, they both end up in Thistlehold 3 months later, but Yandrame is working devoutly for the church, and Alindra is trying to track down information of what happened to their mother, and that trail has led her to Thistlehold now, and she's paying out of pocket at the Witch and Familiar, and is trying to just but is 1 day away from having to move out to the tent city because she can't afford it anymore because she's running out of money. And And Yandrome and Alindra meet every day at the Bronze Well, but it's getting colder and colder and colder. And at the beginning, when the Wrath of the Warden begins, it's kind of implied that the two of them are going their separate ways now, and that they're not going to stay together. And Alindra is going to follow the trail and head off somewhere else, and Yandrome is going to maybe go off and begin training in a different place and go to a different monastery. And then shit happens at Thistlehold, and they all get pulled back in together. In fact, Verd is he's gone away, delivered the kids at Yandaros, and he's fucked off. And when the witches show up at the door and they need an interpreter and they pull someone out of the crowd, it's Verd. And he sees the kids and he goes, God damn it. And he's back in. And all three of them are kind of pulled back in through fate, if you want to say. And they're now entwined into this second mystery where, because they're the only three that have enough breadcrumbs to know that these things are all connected, that they've got to warn everybody, but you can't just warn everyone unless you've got the evidence. And so they're forced back together. And it was, these inseparable siblings at the beginning of Promised Land, when we get arriving at Wrath, and they're like estranged. It was really sad for me as a GM. I was going like, oh no, what NPCs can I throw their way that'll help them show that they should be together?
But it was so fun. Like it was just really fun having like a lot of good reasons in the story to change your character for something more interesting. Like, Alindra's area of study ends up being like abominations, and I'm forgetting now exactly what abilities I end up like. Yeah,
you spend your entire time spending most of your money in
the Lore Master, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I think it wasn't Lore Master I took. It was the Lore Master?
It was Beast Lore.
Beast Lore. Beast Lore,
Beast Lore with a specialty in Abomination. And you've spent in Thistlehold, you've been going into their archive, the liturgy, and spending whatever money you've got to have time to take books and read them, just to pour over everything that there is to know about expeditions that have gone into the forest, people that have been involved, interactions with the Iron Pact, all these stories, because maybe on one of those expeditions, your mother was on them.
Yeah.
And
I did end up taking Lore Master after I got to Thistlehold, so you haven't heard her with Lore Master yet, but that was great, man. Lore Master
came in real
excellent.
handy.
And it was really good because now I know she knows some barbarian because of the Lore Master, which is fun. And it gives the researcher, I'm glad I chose a sort of researcher type character, because it gave me a lot of good reasons to like poke around and be like, interesting barbarian culture, like please tell me more, Verd. And that's why she's staying at the Witch and Familiar, because that's where there's a barbarian witch running or mother who like lives there. It was a great way to get involved with the setting, which is very fun.
Yeah, she is not very fun though. If I remember correctly, she's a little bit of a,
I had them read the
not the brightest view on life.
I had them read the public facing content, so they know what they're allowed to know about Thistlehold. And I absolutely love how it's written with like, as a GM, you get into a part where like, here's what everyone's told about Thistlehold. And here's how we're going to tell you that like 90% of all of that is built on a lie. And it tells the true story of the founding of Thistlehold and what's really going on. And I'm not going to mention it here because it took my breath away when I read just like the one line. In fact, blank is blank is blank. And I went, oh, that explains no wonder Last of Four Night Pitch and and it's all like everything just kind of holy crap. And then now running, even though we barely scratch it in the little bit that we did on the Wrath of the Warden, as a GM, it informs me so much on how the town's guard is going to react to crises, and how the heroes in town, so-called heroes in town, are going to react to crises, and how the leadership actually operates, and how far they're going to go publicly versus what's going on behind the scenes. And it was just so juicy, and it was so simple as well. Like when that reveal happens, at the table they're gonna be like, holy smokes, and it's gonna retcon everything, and it's all gonna make sense. And it was so there's so much wonderful guidance for telling stories to the GM, not just teaching me the rules, but in telling me how characters are informed, their motivations, the secrets that they hold, and knowing why the barbarian witches have arrived, knowing exactly what the well is, knowing what's waiting for them in the sinkhole, what has happened really a week before the campaign even begins, leading up to everything, and this alarm going off.
I actually have a question about that. Did you write the mystery, like the truth first, and then sort of backtrack to what the players knew, or did you start from the players' knowledge and then figure out the mystery after?
Today I can barely remember the process of it. The thing is, we have me mainly, but we are a team. The three guys that have created Symbaroum and have designed most of the adventures and chronicles. So even if I'm the lead writer of this series of adventures, we always talk a lot together, and when we use each other as sounding boards and whatnot, we had more or less the whole campaign arc, including the secrets people keep and when they will be revealed and how that will tie into the story and propel the story forward. Most of it we had already before we started writing the first book.
Wow. Okay.
And even I would say before we started writing the core book.
Wow.
Why? Because we as a team, we have done a couple of other games before for Swedish audience only. And we have always had this idea that we want to create the games to tell, for our sake, to tell a certain pretty, majestic story, storyline. Then we try to design the game so that you can enjoy it and play it without ever getting into the big campaign, which I hope is true for Symbaroum. I know quite a lot of people who play it without ever, even having read the Wrath of the Warden or the other campaign books. So in a sense, I think I know most of the secrets beforehand, but then it's very much a question of imagining what everyday life is like in these. We have Thistlehold in the first book, then it is the barbarian chieftain's stronghold on Karvosti, which is a big cliff inside Davokar. And in the third episode, you have Indaros, which is the capital city. Three, cultural centers or points of light in this setting that are fleshed out in the first 3 episodes of the Chronicle. And then it's very much about trying to I try to put myself in the shoes of the everyday visitor of those places and describe what I see. And knowing the secrets, I can also then foreshadow and mislead, because and this is not necessarily correct for everyone, but for me, I have played role-playing games for quite some time, and what I find most interesting as a player, and also what gets me most immersed in the setting, in the sense that I start caring about it, is those moments of, aha, what? When things get flipped upside down, turned inside out, and just as you said, Justin, suddenly things make sense.
They all come into focus. It's like you finally got the lenses in the right angle and go, oh, I can see why everyone's behaving the way they are.
But it doesn't work if you don't foreshadow it at all. Like if it comes out of nowhere, it's not entertaining. But this campaign, it's so good.
I haven't read the books, and I will not until like someone DMs it for me.
I've 9 years of Terrible Warriors. I've run a lot of games, and a lot of games that are set in urban settings, and some canonical, some made up. And I've never come across a place like Thistlehold where I was given so many tools to inform me on how to make that city come alive. And, just telling me like the businesses, but not just the businesses, but the gossip between those businesses and how the schedules work. And you've got this, a former fortune hunter who's drunk out in the alleyways there. And this is where, if you run out of money, you can still stay in this one place. This is your last chance hotel. And you've got all these little places around, and the place is so full and dense and full of characters, especially when the clan beasts are attacking. And around us are all these other fights with all these other main characters that are being introduced, almost like like in a crossover event, like an Avengers movie. Like they're all just showing up, and they're prominent. They're going to be big deals down the road, and it all just. I've played in cities where they just feel like, if you're in a video game, you're supposed to believe that this is a huge city full of thousands of people, but they can only generate 10 avatars at a time, and they're just kind of all scattered around, and it's not actually that busy. Thistlehold felt very busy, and it feels, even though it's only 11 years old, it feels like an old, well-worn place. It's muddy and crappy.
Because the conflicts that are going on in there are ancient.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because the even if the houses are new, the social scene isn't at all. I must confess that I'm blushing a little bit from what you're saying, and I feel like sillily, I don't know, full of myself because so to downplay the importance of
let me turn it into a
my
question instead of me just like heaping praise on you. Let me ask you a question, because we were talking about building mysteries and knowing the secrets, but how do you then, like, when it comes to the world building beyond the telling the quests, how do you go about with Yandaros and Thistlehold and Karvasti and the rest to making those places feel, because it's more than just a map. Because the map becomes more than, like, you got all these points of it, but when reading, like, there was guidance for me to tell those stories. There's information for me to give to the players. There's all this stuff, and if I tell them, then they can. By the time we're doing the investigation, they know where to go because they've read the primer on Thistlehold, and it feels like we've lived there for a while. And I've never, any other game where we've been in a city, I have to start leading people on rails to drag them through, because I know more than they do, and their characters know more than they do. And this was very different from that. So I guess the designing of Thistlehold as a place, as a sandbox, but also a setting for your main story and your chronicles, how does that come about to help make it feel so lived in?
I think no easy answer to that one. We in the Game Master's Guide that we released last year, I think, I've written a section about designing settings, designing game worlds, and settings within those worlds. And one of the things that I think is an important factor in making that feeling come about is that the ideal is to describe everything in the world in relation to other things in that world. So instead of saying that, the rose garden is a flea infested sort of a really cheap, Amsterdam hostel, you compare the rose garden to other establishments in Indaros or Thistlehold, and you just do the same thing with everything else you are describing. So when I'm describing the rose garden, I'm not only describing it, I'm also describing everything, a lot of other places in that town and the relations between the rose garden and those other establishments. So you get this sort of structure or dynamic or the contrasts of the town all the time. I don't know, that may be a little bit flimsy or.
It helped me. You'll hear it when we get to Thistlehold that as they're going around, there's even as big a deal as the sinkhole and that and the alarm going off. There's still other stories happening all the time. There's this supposed heretic that keeps seeing people every morning. There's lineups to his place. There's the three brothers who are passing through, and there's all these rumors and a buzz about like they're apparently they're heading off to Temple Wall. What are they doing here? And there's all these comings and goings, and the nobles are all packing up and getting out of town, and like they've got their whole thing, and you feel smaller in this world in other than compared to others, where like in other settings we've played, you're Aragorn, right? Like you're gonna be the biggest deal in the world. In this one, if you're lucky, you might be able to warn the mayor what's going on, and you'll get a commendation.
But to be fair, I mean,
then they'll forget about it next week.
You have just played or sniffed at the first part of the Chronicle. I am currently writing part 6.
Oh, and I'm sure by the time you are the biggest characters in the realm, it's going to feel so earned, though.
Yeah, but you will probably still feel small, but because the stakes are even higher, and the decisions you have to make are not easier by the time you get to that point. But you will definitely be walking around in Thistlehold like a household name. Everyone knows who you are and look up to you and knows much of your, So you in Symbaroum, you can become a hero in that sense.
You can also become very infamous. You're right.
Oh, yeah.
By Chronicle 6, you could be walking around Thistlehold, but you're also presuming that Thistlehold still exists by Chronicle 6, depending on how things go with Wrath of the Warden. That's not a guarantee. And there's a chance that even if they do happen to survive that terrible night, the players are going to have to flee and change their name because everyone's going to know how bad they were. And it can really...
No, I mean, obviously you can align yourself with a lot of different factions in this setting, and one of them being the Iron Pact. And of course, if you become known in Ambria as champions of the Iron Pact, there are lots of people who will not like you at all.
Yeah, you'd be completely ostracized.
Throw you out from the inn or from their store or whatever.
And it's really fun seeing like our characters are already so heavily entrenched in their own packs without even feeling like, no, Yandrame, you chose your side and you stayed there. and Baird by birthright did. But like Alindra didn't make as many choices, but she's slowly becoming unaligned with things more than she's aligning with things. And it's really interesting to have a character that I'm not even... I don't have to actively make a choice to say like she's going to be interested and involved with this faction because they're just such a living, breathing part of the town that touches you. Like I really resonate when you were saying how you're creating things in relation to each other rather than just on their own, because this really does feel like a sort of ecosystem rather than like pinpoints where we have to decide where the town is going. Like the town's moving around us and we're choosing what
things are going to happen with or without you. And if you're lucky, you might be able to help correct its course into a place that everyone's a little bit better off than where it's currently going. Because right now it's going off a cliff. And Alindra feels like the most, like the one who's got the path in front of her to decide where she's going to go and choose her allegiance to. But I know, Sean, you confided in me with the Yandrame. After that moment up in the mountains, you're having thoughts about what darkness is, what the church is saying it is, where the Twilight Friars play into it, this combat between light and dark and the truth of Prior's Light you have just taken for granted. But now you're seeing that maybe the destruction of nature actually isn't helping at all.
Can I ask you, Sean?
Sure.
Did Yandrame get the chance to meet Father Sarvola?
No, he does not, unfortunately.
Okay.
I mentioned it every single episode.
Yeah.
He does.
He does.
I mentioned the lineup of pilgrims that are there, and he's in town. And he's just south of the Bronze Well, where you meet with your sister every day. You want to go check in with him? He's like, I will not be seen in the same room as a heretic. And it's like, all right.
No, because that's one of my favorite, realizations of the main conflict is what's happening with the Sun Church. And the loyalists, as they are called, the ones that want to follow the giver of laws or the lawgiver, and then you have the reformists who become more numerous over time and who wants to sort of take a step back to when Prius was the giver of life, the life giver instead, and more or less, this loving, all-embracing father,
a schism
mother
is
/
coming.
God of creation. Yeah.
The schism hasn't happened yet, but you can see the fault lines.
You can see where it's starting. I feel like Yandrame was very well positioned where we left the campaign to not necessarily to have not chosen a side yet and to have that choice sort
but
of
if you
on
don't
him.
pick a side, the rift is going to open up and you're going to fall right down
in the middle.
it.
Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting playing him of sort of walking that line of he was prejudiced and he was coming from a place of he was indoctrinated from a very young age by in the lawgiver side of things, but he's starting to question that, but he isn't quite pushed over that line yet. And I love that there's enough stuff in the church that you can play with that. You can pick either direction, or you can play around, and there's things to explore that it's not just one note.
And becoming an apostate would be a perfectly valid arc for your character too, and it develop it that way. So the siblings are this other story, but then we have our very mysterious witch Verd. And Mitch, you haven't had a chance to say much because you joined in mid conversation, but I want you to give a chance because as Verd, you're very soft spoken. You don't say a lot of things. You don't let us into what's going on, and so it made you a very impactful character on the scene. Because when you did act, it was always a big deal, and you're trying to give us warnings, and we're constantly ignoring you, and then you're always right. And so as Mitch, how was Verd for you into this? Because I know you came in with a Symbaroum background already, having knowing the game, having played the game. So let us in on some of your secrets, because Mattias can't share his. So to share us Verd, what was it like playing this spirit witch of the clans?
Yeah, so this was the second time I've gotten to play a barbarian. I've enjoyed Symbaroum for years and pretty much backed every Kickstarter. So a huge fan and such. And there was an opportunity I think about 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, there was a Symbaroum writing contest that me and my friend participated in. So we ended up writing a scenario called Rite of Passage, which was kind of like an entry scenario, but yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So that was myself and my friend who did that. And so I really wanted to have the barbarian perspective at the start of it. And then I saw the spiritualist and kind of how the advanced player guide went into the three facets of how the witches believe magic is and the world is. And I thought it was so enchanting. And so Verd is a spiritualist in training, and deals with kind of the nightmares of seeing the dead every now and then, because he can't really control it at this point in time. It's a far thing from him to be able to talk and speak to them. They just kind of terrify him at night. And he's also addicted to drugs to help him sleep. So he's a very troubled, barbarian witch who had to fulfill this promise to his father to get these two Ambrians over to their land and risk his life doing it so that his father can be proud of him. And these two kids, he doesn't like using their names. That's kind of a decision I made earlier on, that they're just male Ambrian and female Ambrian until something changes.
I'll use your names when you earn it, is what you said.
Yeah. And I think at the last episode, I accidentally called
someone by their name.
Yeah. I called her by her name a couple of times. I was like, crap. But that's just weird, It's
interesting that you say you're a witch in training, because Alindra and Yandrame clearly approach you as the master. You're the one with all the knowledge and all the answers. You're clearly the one in charge. and you yourself are just a student as well.
Yeah, exactly. He's going through a lot, but he does. I mean, he knows that if the Iron Pact asks for something, that you just give it to him, and that's just the safest route to go, and you don't have a conversation to try to save whoever brought the wrath of the Iron Pact upon them. And so I guess it's just been really fun to just kind of watching these two grow and such, while like Veerd is also growing in trying to keep this facade of this mysterious barbarian when really he doesn't know.
I don't know how much planning you did ahead when you sort of composed the adventuring party or whatnot, but I have only listened to a couple of episodes now, but I think it makes for a really good show to have that, the barbarian versus the two youngsters that know exactly, they think they know about the world because they read about it, or because in Yandrame's case, because he knows the teaching of the god, the sun god, and the dynamic becomes really interesting because it also you have sort of the dilemma we talked before you came in, Mitch. We talked about the dilemma of, do we hand Belun and Lude over, or do we defend them against these hostile monstrous elves? But your relationship is kind of a mini version of that conflict in some sense. So whether or not it was intentional, I think it brings a lot of flavor to the table.
Yeah, it worked out very well. Yeah, I was super excited because I love the barbarians and the different clans and lores surrounding them. And yeah, it was such a perfect mix.
It wasn't intentional. I let all three of them make the character they wanted to make, and then we all met for one meeting before, which then turned into that episode 0 prelude that we recorded. And so they all got a chance to like go over and because Sean and I had done a session 0 last year where we all made our own characters in the game. So we knew a little bit like we were getting into. So I just let them go, like, make the character you're excited about. And what we ended up with was this like really interesting triangle of conflict between all three of them. Yeah. Because the siblings are not united. They appear because they're both Ambrians and their family, but we also have the religious brother and the secular atheist almost sister who are both debating amongst themselves, and then you got this academic, but then Ainsley and Mitch are united in now about what the danger of darkness is and coming on board. So Ainsley is bridging between her dogmatic brother and this mysterious witch, and is trying to understand that neither of them have all the information, but together they have more information and can make more informed choices. And yet within that group, they all worked really well together as a team, but there was always this like simmering conflict. It was always just kind of there. And Yandrame and Mitch end up being united in Thistlehold in, we have to be calm and we need to look at this crisis and we need to do things properly because Alindra is getting, she got so wound up about her mother and trying to find information to the point where she's putting herself and everyone around them at danger. Yeah. We got to get into that sinkhole now. We got to find out what she knew. We got to kick down doors, fight, whatever, like start killing people if we have to, like, and everyone's like, maybe tap the brakes a little, right? And for the first time then, Yandrame and Veerd are now a united force against this obsession that Alindra is now the one going down a darker path. And it was really interesting to see these different arcs all teetering around each other. I really hope we do get to return to it again, because we have some unfinished business to attend to, for sure. Much.
then
Oh, yeah.
I will definitely not spoil anything for you.
I don't want you to spoil anything, Mattias, but I do want you, for both my players and for our listeners, and for anyone who's thinking of getting Wrath of the Warden and trying to look it into itself. We have descended into the sinkhole. They have heard the singing lyrics, mysterious as they are. They are finding that there is more underneath Thistlehold than they might have expected. It wasn't just rubbles of a building. And as these creatures attacked them, they haven't found anything that has led them to. They found those few little clues that were on the woman's body when the fern fell into the sinkhole, and they've spoken to the witches. So what would you think everyone should be most excited to anticipate to be, or what should they be most afraid of? Or most concerned? Where are they not looking?
The big concern in Wrath of the Warden, I must admit I haven't read it for a while, but I think I know it more or less by heart. But I mean, by now you do know that the main concern is that someone has. Do you know that? What do you know after speaking?
So they know
do they know about Eox?
They know that they're being followed. They don't know that they're cults yet. They know that people are chasing them down, and that someone, because I do a few moments where the camera lets
but
them.
They know that there is a super strong source of corruption somewhere in town.
The witches are saying that, and that's what caused the well to go off.
Yeah, but they don't know the exact source.
They've already met them during the clan beast attack. They.
Okay. All right.
What? Wait, who was that? What?
Okay, stop. He didn't say that. He absolutely didn't say that.
Yeah.
But
We'll benefit from a
no,
bad memory.
I think you will be very much in.
Yeah.
Okay, this is hard, but when you learn what that source of corruption is, it will make you go, oh, and probably a little bit louder than that. More like,
that sense of doom you had with the Bellin and Ludo thing.
Yeah,
that's one.
Yeah,
that's one on the heat dial on the
exactly.
stove. This isn't a 10.
This is different.
But
it isn't.
But it's it's definitely medium high.
Yeah,
on the stove. It's enough to bring you to a boil if you leave it on long enough.
You also know that the Iron Pact is active in Thistlehold, and playing onwards in this scenario, you get to interact a little bit more with the elves. And if you play your cards right, you even get to meet them. And
I'm so excited! I want to meet elves.
in a place that is a place of myths and legends.
If you were to ask around, they'd say it's not real.
That place, of course not.
No.
It isn't.
Who
told you it's real? It's not real.
That's just a thing that clan mothers tell their children to keep them to go to bed at night. Yeah.
The elves are nothing but brutes that eat children that behave, especially children that behave badly. Everyone knows that.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want to be taken in your sleep and replaced by a changeling?
Exactly. No, but the main thing about Wrath of the Warden is that even if it's hopefully action loaded, and now I'm going to say that I was going to downplay the role of me as a designer of this, me and my friends as a designer, because what comes out at the table is all about what a game master can do with it, or can pick up from it and turn into drama. So if you had fun, thank Justin as much as us for that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that Wrath of the Warden is an adventure that is designed to be, it's the starting adventure of the Chronicle. So the main purpose is to introduce the main players, and you get to meet, fractioneers from all the main factions, but low level ones. So you don't meet like the queen, but you may meet one of her siblings or one of her,
representatives.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to meet the head of the church, but you are going to meet maybe the chapter head in Thistlehold, if you're lucky. And
Elfeno and also maybe, you will.
And I love that like everyone knows who Lassifor Night Pitch is. And of course he makes a heroic appearance during the Clan Beast attack. And if they play their cards right and they are able to eventually convince to get an audience, I would hope that like at that point you have played hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And the actual meeting with this person is going to be, you should feel nervous. You should feel like this is a big deal and you have worked really hard for it. And it's
but
really
that's
interesting.
it with Breath of the Warden. You get to you get introduced to the main factions and to the main conflicts of the story. Hopefully you have some fun and excitement while having that introduction. But then when we go off to the second part of the campaign, which is called the Witch Hammer, and starts at Karvosti inside Davokar, the stakes immediately become very much higher, and you get to do a lot of traveling in Davokar forest and whatnot. There are some small trips into Davokar in Breath of the Warden as well, I should say, but
it's mostly almost like a murder mystery happening in Thistlehold. It's a very urban detective story, which I really enjoy. With in the third act, it gets really. This is where I saw when you and I last talked. You said Symbaroum was like Game of Thrones meets Princess Mononoke, and the third act of Wrath of the Warden, reading it, is what felt like that Princess Mononoke, where we're dealing with bigger things from the forest. We're dealing with reminding me of scenes in the third act of Princess Mononoke itself, where you have like the boars showing up and all this, and it has that feeling of the supernatural side of this world as well. And but because it's in the third act, it's also so far. You spend the first much of it almost in a very, I don't want to say mundane, but a very real, grounded world that gradually slides you into rituals and then magic and then gods and then prophecy and go bigger and bigger. And then you realize at the end of that third act, you're like, we are part of something much bigger than a missing woman in a sinkhole. And and a well exploding in the middle of the day. It was.
I feel like story structure wise, like that's important though to establish the normal before you dive into the weird. And I think it makes the weird that much more impactful. It's great that you did it in that order. I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. I think that some people who mainly play role-playing games for rolling dice and escaping reality, maybe they don't want to learn or play.
They don't want to have a lesson on ethics. They want to
no, but not lesson on ethics, but play more low-level grounded stuff. They want to go out chasing gods the first thing they do. I prefer for it to and I prefer this as a player as well when that gets to weight, because
I think our whole table was united in playing flawed, simple, fragile characters where this is a lethal world and you need to respect the people around you or things are going to turn. And playing like all three, Verd, Yandrame and Alindra, all three are fabulous characters that also have some really fun blind spots and flaws and weaknesses built into them, either through addiction or ignorance or obsession, which then give everyone else at our table. I know you were saying it's all about the GM, but it really is also about the players. All three of you were giving, you were lifting each other up by giving conflict that wasn't putting roadblocks in the story, but giving other opportunities for the other characters to step forward and get involved in that narrative. It's not like I've played games where the problems from the characters are drawing the group apart and are making telling the story more difficult and splitting things up and splitting up objectives. Whereas this, everyone like, yes, Yandrame is a problem with the church, and that faith needs to be challenged and talked about. But also, it's not going to slow. It doesn't slow the story down either. The conflict continued to spiral it forward and move it forward. And same thing with Verd. Verd doesn't want to be there. He wants to be anywhere else than where he is. But also, there's something where he can't just turn his back on stuff going down.
You like us, Beard.
Well, I
can't
felt like
hide it.
the party conflict was directly tied to the story conflict. And I think that was a big, it wasn't separate. It was part of our different moral reactions as characters to what was going on. And
every job felt like, we'll do this job and then we'll go our separate ways. And it's one more job and then we never deal with each other again.
But then like our characters learn to respect each other or not, or, you know, like our opinions of each other change, and that changed the dynamic, but we all still were on the same team at the end of the day, which was really neat.
Okay, we are out of time. So I want to go around the table and get everyone final thoughts or a question for Mattias as we round up. Our story for Terrible Warriors for now may be concluded, but the story of our three characters and of Thistlehold and of Symbaroum is far from over. And so I hope we continue to play this again, and I hope the people listening might pick up this story and try it for themselves, and that we have whetted that appetite and made them hungry for more. Because if you want to know all the answers, you just got to be a GM. They'll tell you. It's like being a magician, right? You can find, it's very easy to learn the secrets of a magician. You just have to go to penguinmagic.com and buy the trick. And then they tell you how it is. So it's the same story with Symbaroum. Like, if you want to know what was taking my breath away in Thistlehold of learning the secrets, it's in the Game Master book. It's right there. It's printed. It's available. Go for it. And then run the game and blow the minds of your players. But for my players around the table, let's start with Mitch and work our way back. What are your final thoughts here as we for a time depart the lands of Ambria?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I really hope we get to continue on, because I've really wanted to push through and hit all the campaigns. Symbaroum has always been my favorite fantasy TTRPG, and so being able to dive into it and play it it's just been so exciting for me. And you know, I'm really excited about the next books and such, and where Symbaroum goes in the future. So yeah, those are my final comments, and obviously my fellow players and the GM. Like, thank you so much. That was awesome, and I hope we get to do more shenanigans together.
Ainsley Moores.
I will very much echo what Mitch said. Interestingly, when I came to this, I did not have much experience. I got into tabletop role-playing games at the beginning of the pandemic-ish. I'm like fairly new to it, despite being a bit of like an actor and always wanting to try doing role-playing games. And this was my first like non-5e game that I really got into. I've like touched a few other systems, and it was just, it was so fun dipping into the lore. Seeing a tabletop role-playing game that was so lore focused that's like my bread and butter, my favorite part of it. And it was so great. And it's not very scary if you're someone who doesn't know how isn't good with the mechanics of games. Like the rolling for yourself ended up being really simple to manage after a few sessions and be like, okay, this is great. I just have to roll for me, and I'm rolling against other people, and I just have to know where I'm at. So do yourself the favor and play it. I'm gonna GM this for some friends now, because it's so.
I'll have
so
you
good,
GM.
but I can't
Tell you
it.
what, we'll keep playing.
Yeah.
We'll go into.
I want the story reveal.
We'll finish Wrath of the Warden together, and then when we do which hammer is it? You'll run it.
Oh boy.
You'll run it, and I'll play your mother. In Carvasti, and we'll check in with them what was going on.
Perfect. Excellent. But yeah, thank you, Mattias, for speaking with us and for writing this awesome game, because it was a blast, and I hope we come back to it like everyone else here.
Sean.
I was just going to say, I'm feeling really conflicted, actually, because I really, really want to continue playing this game and find out things organically as my character. But I've been playing RPGs for years, and this is the first one I've thought, no, I could actually run this, and I want to.
So we'll have you do the
secret
third
spoil.
chapter in the Chronicle is what we'll
There
do.
we go.
And we'll just keep this going. That'll be wonderful.
Yeah. Because I love the system, I love the game, I love the lore. This game is fantastic, and I couldn't
and in
have asked for a
chapter
better group of
3,
people.
I'll play the patron saint who might be your grandfather
missing?
for all we know. Yeah.
the patron saint who can't hit anything.
Oh boy.
But thank you, Mattias, for this a fantastic game. I really enjoy it.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. This has been like the most interesting interview I've done, because you haven't hit me with very many hard questions. The most difficult thing for me have been to try not to smile from happiness all the time, because my face muscles are starting to go numb. Because it's been such a joy listening to you talk about Symbaroum. Also, I must say, the 2 first episodes I've enjoyed very, very much. So I'm super excited for what's to come, and I will listen. And I will try to make sure that even more people find the terrible warriors and start following your exploits, because it's been and also I must say, Justin, that your first introductions to the setting, the sort of introducing monologue you had in episode 1, because always when I listen to actual plays of Symbaroum, I'm a little bit anxious at first, but
How am I going to mess it up? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It took like 3-4 minutes, and I just sank back and immersed in the story. So no, you've done a swell job, and I'm super happy that you have had fun, because that's the deal with role-playing games, right? Not playing right, but having fun.
I had so much fun running the game, and then now going back and editing them into the story with the music and the effects. And in the next episode that's coming out tomorrow, I record an additional intro. I've decided every episode's going to have some kind of opening monologue in a way to help reframe where we're at, offer a little bit more clues to the listener of the world that they're in, and talk about that. So like even in Thistlehold, while we don't get a lot revealed to the players, I am going to tell some of the gossip and stories of like the tale that everyone knows about Last Night Pitch, not the one that you and I know, but the one that everyone knows about the founding of Thistlehold, and share those stories at the beginning as a way. I really, this is just me as a podcast producer. I really like not having intros to our episode, not being like, today we're at the table with so and so and so and so. We're in, and so we do the monologue, and then the music, and then someone starts talking, and then we're back into the game, and it's this is the show I want to listen to. That's all I ever want to make, and I'm really, really proud of how it all sounds, and it wouldn't be possible without such a cool game, without such great players, and without devoted listeners like you, my dear listeners, for supporting us and making this happen. So I don't know yet at the time that we're doing, because this, I know Mattias was like, this is a very weird interview. It wasn't. It was a roundtable post-game breakdown that we really wanted to invite you to and celebrate the end of this story, because we had so much fun. We wanted you to be a part of this, basically a rap party that we're having here. And then we're going to pivot now into the game that we are going to be recording in November. This interview is happening in September. I don't know what game we're doing in November yet. We're planning that in October. So time travel and space continue to elude me, and we will move ourselves into that next world. I would do Symbaroum again right now and keep it going, except Sean is going to be traveling.
He lives on a boat.
And he lives on a boat now. He might not be in Portugal for all I know. So so we have to wait till you come back, and because I would not dare take another step into the story without having all three of you with me to do that. And so it is not out of the picture that we will return to this, but for now we'll pivot to something else for a time, and I'm excited to see what that is. And I know, Mattias, this will not be the last time you and I will be talking to each other. Congratulations on Blade Runner. Congratulations!
Yes.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Congratulations
So
on the
good.
Annie Awards with all those Alien RPGs. Maybe we'll just play Alien next. And all of
Yeah, I'm actually playing that later tonight.
everything Free League comes out. I know it's I don't mean to continue. I just they're the best books on my shelf in terms of production quality, in terms of the writing, the art, obviously.
Oh yeah, we didn't mention the art. The art in
my God, the
Symbaroum.
art is
My
so good.
God, the
Oh,
art.
yeah.
I had a friend over this weekend, and I brought all the Free League books out, and so it's like, here's Coriolis, here's Symbaroum, here's Alien, here's Forbidden Lands, and just pour through the art right now because they're going through a graphic design course, and just start taking down notes.
I have a very interesting task coming up next, aside from writing some cool stuff. I'm also putting together, I don't know if you know that, you know, at least, Justin, that we did a Kickstarter for a 5e conversion of the Symbaroum setting.
Yes.
And as part of that Kickstarter, we promised the backers a Symbaroum art book, a digital one.
Yeah.
A digital one, meaning that there are no limitations to what I can put in there.
Right.
If we people have asked for a physical one as well, and we may just do that at one point or another. But in this case, I get to, really delve headlong into the treasure of artwork that, I mean, we have put out, can it be 15, 16 hardcover books by now? Yeah. Something like that, between 10 and 16 at least. I haven't counted. All of them full of the works of Martin Grip and Gustav Ekelund. And it's a true privilege to write stuff and then having those guys make it come alive.
Being able to show that image in Wrath of the Warden and show the picture to my players of the witches on their colossi outside the gates.
Yeah.
Like that's it. I don't have to say anything more. That image conveyed everything, and it brought another layer into the world, another grimy layer into the world.
And often I send off sort of a description of what kind of artwork I want, and I get something else back that is way cooler than what I imagined. So I end up rewriting the text instead.
Excellent.
So that's a very nice collaboration between me and Martin specifically.
And this is the thing is I want to keep playing Symbaroum. I know just to get through Wrath of the Warden, I was joking earlier, it's going to take us 7 more 4-hour sessions to get done. But I also want to play The One Ring. I also want to play Alien. I also want to play, I still haven't played Coriolis. It's been on my shelf for years.
Tisk.
Right?
You'll love that.
And so I keep starting Raven's Purge, and then I have to keep starting it over and over again with Forbidden Lands, and I never get to the Bitter Reach, and then I got another one coming out soon, and it's just there's just so many games and not enough time.
I just need to second what Mitch was saying. If you like Symbaroum and the way this lore-heavy kind of setting that makes for interesting stories. Just yesterday, I had a meeting with Rickard Antroja and Costa Kostalus, the two of my colleagues, about the third and final episode in the Coriolis Chronicle or campaign, which is called The Mercy of the Itans. And that will also be we will see 2 of the really meaty Free League campaigns come to a closure during next year, both the one for Symbaroum and the one for Coriolis.
I know you're giving me a lot of extra time, and I really do appreciate it. Symbaroum and Coriolis both share such a close personal story with you. You know, it predates Free League. It goes all the way back to your original publishing company, and the story you told me of the company having to close and having to liquidate those assets, you selling Coriolis to Paradox Games and then being able to buy it back all those years later when Free League came in to exist as it does now. So I know, like, when I'm talking about these stories, and like Symbaroum in a consumer's head is only so many years, but for you, I know Symbaroum and Coriolis it's such a big part of your life now. It's going back so many years.
Yeah,
and you've been telling this story, and now you're getting to the point where you're at this place where you're finishing the story proper of Symbaroum and Coriolis. What's that? What is that like?
No, it's terrifying. I can tell you that. At least until now, it feels. If we talk Symbaroum specifically, which I'm writing, it was terrifying. It felt extremely daunting until the moment when I started writing the first draft or outline, I should say, synopsis of this final campaign book. Then when I saw that things came together pretty nicely, now it feels I'm just eager to get on with the writing. And also because Symbaroum is that kind of game where we expect the game master to listen to the players, the player initiatives, and also the character initiatives. So I know that at the end of this chronicle, we will have very different types of stories being told around the globe at, almost parallel universes where the Kingdom of Ambria and the Davoka region turns out very differently depending on which gaming table you're at. So that's also, it will be very interesting to get to hear all those different stories when people start playing. So no, I'm super excited.
Well, congratulations on such a monumental journey and being able to have the opportunity to finish that story. I know that was not always a guarantee, and to have that come to fruition, congratulations. And it may be, wrapping of a story in these two game worlds, but it's certainly not an end, and not an end at all from what Free League is doing. You've had another,
and not for those brands or settings either, but for at least for the first big story arcs set in those game worlds. Both of those games will live on for many, many years to come.
Well, and I'm looking forward to continuing to talk to you about these games for many, many years to come as well. Mattias, thank you so much for spending time with us and for joining us as we wrapped our story. Mitch, Wallace, Ainsley Moores, and Sean Horbachuck, thank you so much for being a part of this cast. I know you are going to continue working with us for future games. I think our next game we're going to be rotating around our characters a bit, and I'll be making those announcements soon, so follow us on Twitter at Dice Warriors where you learn all about that. We're just going to keep doing everything that we're doing, and so it's we're only just getting started. This has been a really invigorating start to this new season. This is I feel so thrilled and humbled and pleased and excited and all kinds of emotions about how this has come together, and I'm really glad that we were all able to get together as a group to talk about it and to share our stories. And so for now, I bid you all adieu and thank you for joining us. And until that time where we are all again around the table, rolling dice and sharing stories and worlds of our creations, be good to each other.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks again go out to Mattias and the entire team at Free League for supporting us with their feedback and excitement during the entire run of our Symbaroum production. To help spread that excitement and thank you for supporting this podcast, we've teamed up with Free League to give away a physical copy of the Symbaroum Starter Set, Treasure Hunts in Davokar. Yeah, we're gonna mail you a copy wherever you live if you win. To enter in, visit terriblewarriors.com or click the link in the show notes and increase your odds at winning by introducing your entire gaming group to the Terrible Warriors and letting them know that this small but mighty actual play podcast is worth their time. This beautiful box set includes maps, pre-generated characters, and a simplified rule book with instructions on how to conduct your own adventures as fortune hunters in the dark forest of Davokar. We will announce the winner at the end of December on our Twitter account at Dice Warriors. To learn more about Symbaroum and all of their incredible offerings, visit freeleaguepublishing.com. And if you like how we do things around here and you'd like us to keep going in 2022 and beyond, we exist solely thanks to our continued supporters from Patreon at patreon.com/terriblewarriors. Along with supporting a scrappy underdog independent podcaster, you can also join me at a private monthly game that I host every month for our Patreon supporters over Discord. This month, we're starting a new adventure in Symbaroum, the Tomb of Dying Dreams, where we will finally get a chance to venture into the vast Davokar forest. All of the details on how to join our game can be found on our Patreon page or by sending me a direct message over Discord or Twitter or wherever you can track me down. Your Terrible Warriors today have been Mitch Wallace, Sean Horbachuck, Ainsley Moores, myself, Justin Eacock, and Mattias Johnsson Haake. Editing and production is also by me. Music is licensed through Epidemic Sound, and the Terrible Warrior theme song is by Epic Game Music. We'll be back with new episodes and stories to share in 2022, including actual play sessions where we'll be playing Terrible Warrior alumni Darla Burrows' Dear Great Cthulhu, please stop giving me superpowers! And until that dawn of a new year brightens our table, please keep sharing your stories. Please keep being open to playing new games and to playing with new people. Keep being Terrible Warriors and be good to each other.